Have today is the speaker today is Lisa Rubin, who is the Artistic and Executive Director of the Segal Centre. Lisa made her professional debut with the production of Bad Jews during the Segal's 2015-16 season, which went on to tour in Toronto in 2018. Lisa has played a role in the development of the new Canadian musicals such as The Apprenticeship of Donna Kravitz in 2014, the English version of Rebelle Sur, which is a musical in 2017, Prom Queen in 2016, A Hockey Sweater, and The Angel and the Sparrow, which is in 2018. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to chat to this group. I could tell and see how dedicated all of the members are for continuing to show up on Zoom. It's you know, I think it's probably one of the greatest things to come out of the pandemic, even if we can't meet in person, to continue bringing everyone together this way. So I'm really happy to be here, and it couldn't come at a better time because tomorrow I am going to be revealing the entire Segal season to the public for the first time. It's going to be our first season, I would say, that feels normal. Really, it feels normal, and although we're bracing ourselves for anything, I can honestly say I think all of us and the team who's been working hard and all the artists involved in the upcoming season are excited to kind of feel, you know, feel like we can get back to doing what we love, and we can welcome audiences back with no more strings attached with the pandemic. And I'll get into more into that soon. But I did think, because we are announcing everything tomorrow, we are so close, and all of the media already have the press releases under embargo, that given that this is a small group, and given that I know it's being recorded, but I'm not too worried, I guess, about the entire community going onto the Facebook page in the next 24 hours. I'd be willing to share what we're doing next season, if that sounds good to everybody. Does that sound good? Yeah. So I'll say also, I think we've always known the role that theater plays in the community in terms of bringing people together, having this kind of shared experience, connecting on our humanity, and being entertained, of course. And you know, in the past 2 years especially, it's really taken on a deeper role of, one, social impact, two, reminder of the reasons why you can't compare live experiences with the digital, and three, how important our role is for the succession and the ongoing artists, to support artists working in our industry. And I think that's something that we're heading into this season really on top of mind. How can we make a difference? How do we support future generations of theater artists and theater goers? And why is it important to be live and gather live? And so all the plays that we're going to be doing, and everything else that we have around it in terms of community programming, I think is all really coming together nicely with that in mind. So something that is a little bit different this year is we only have 4 productions. And although these 4 productions are all amazing, we do have 4. It's less than usual, and that is definitely a result of the pandemic and the fact that we are in a recovery mode, and that we are expecting audiences to be smaller. I mean, it is a reality on Broadway. It's a reality everywhere you look and everywhere you go, that everything is unpredictable right now. And so, yes, I'm saying it's a return to normal, but it's definitely not a return to normal in terms of our revenue, in terms of our staffing and our ability to produce the amount that we produced before. So I think that's a very responsible decision our board of directors took, along with myself and our team, to be a little bit more responsible and prudent as we are in recovery from the last 2 years. Okay, so I'll start with the first show. The first show is a show that I was planning to do before the pandemic. It's the only one that I'm bringing back that I never got to announce. It's based on Dracula, but it's Dracula like you've never seen it before. It's Dracula Mel Brooks style, 39 step style. We're calling it Dracula, a comedy of terrors, because it is 90 minutes of all laughs, all fun, phenomenal cast of actors who just change costumes, play a million characters, and they just have a good time. You don't need to know anything about Dracula to have fun with it. And what this play means to me is welcoming back audiences to have fun, number one. And number two is reminding everybody how incredible live actors are and what they can do. So that's Dracula. We're going to be starting it right in time for Halloween. And then, because I don't know if anybody saw Super Dogs or heard of the crazy, the wild and wacky, choices we made during the pandemic, but we had the most success with young audiences, and we realized that having something for young families was important. So, pairing nicely with Dracula in our smaller space, we're going to be working with Geordie Theatre, phenomenal company who does specifically theater for young audiences, and they'll be doing Frankenstein. So we have Dracula and Frankenstein for the young, Dracula for all. And so that's how we're going to open the season. Gordon Greenberg, who directed The Angel and the Sparrow, which was the story about Marlene Dietrich and Edith Piaf that later went on to Toronto, will be back as director. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. So the next show we're doing is a play that I saw in New York City recently, although I've had my eye on it for 2 years. It was also one of those shows that kept getting delayed because of the pandemic. This is a show called English. And I'll let that sink in for a sec, because doing a play and having this big title of English splattered across our building and in all the ads, I think is a very interesting and important thing to talk about at the moment, although it's not about what you think, but it is about identity and belonging. And it is about what happens when your language gets stifled, and what happens to your personality when you're not able to communicate the way that you want to communicate. English is about a group of Iranians who are in a classroom studying for their English as a second language test, the TOEFL, if anybody's heard of that, because all of them have different reasons of why they want to learn English and why they want to leave their country and where they want to go. And we get to witness their ups and downs as they struggle with learning a new language. And I think it will showcase a cultural community that isn't white, however you want to name it, just some different, but it'll also bring us closer together and remind us that we are not so different. And I think it's going to offer beautiful perspectives and bring everybody together in a way that we may have not looked at before. So that's the play called English by Sanaz Tusi, a female Iranian American playwright. Next is a play that I'll be directing. Has anyone here ever seen Bad Jews? It's a play that I did quite a few years ago. That play was written by a young playwright named Josh Harmon. The play changed his life, and he has since gone on and written more plays. And I will be directing his latest play called Prayer for the French Republic. This is about a family in France in 2016 who are contemplating leaving their home because anti-Semitism is so bad. And as the Segal Centre, in our mission to not only do plays that showcase the perspectives of others in society, but also that explore Jewish identity in the arts, Prayer for the French Republic takes a look at anti-Semitism today. And it's probably the most exciting and wonderful play I have seen in recent memory. It's why I had to wipe everything off the table and do it. It has Joshua Harmon's witty dialogue. It's very, it's a very incredible snapshot of people today, or at 2016, but it can be today, and what this family is going through, and having to make that decision to leave their home. And we know that we in Montreal, in the Jewish community, have received quite a few families from France in recent years who have all left their home because it wasn't fun for them to live in France anymore. And they're now here in Montreal. So really, this taking place in English, although we need to believe that they're speaking French. But I think it's going to be a wonderful play for everybody. And finally, I end with a phenomenal musical cabaret featuring one of the most outstanding talents that I've discovered recently here in Montreal this past summer at the Montreal Fringe Festival. And this is a story of Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker, activist, World War II spy, burlesque dancer, mother to 12. And, you know, I've always heard of Josephine, but I really didn't understand the impact that she and how Josephine would pave the way for Tina Turner and Beyonce and all these incredible, you know, Black women artists, and what she had to overcome. So this is a show that features music and burlesque and theater, and performed by Tamisha Harris, called Josephine Baker, a musical cabaret. And it will be directed and choreographed by Sean Cheeseman, who we've worked with just recently on April Fools and on Prom Queen, and who's just come off So You Think You Can Dance as choreographer, and is just a phenomenal talent. And we're so happy he's coming back to do it. So that's the season. Those are the 4 shows. Did I say them all? Dracula, English, Prayer for the French Republic, and Josephine, a musical cabaret. And then as a little gift to everyone to get excited about the season, we have a show for one night only, coming right from New York, called Just for Us, and that's September 17th. At 8 p.m. Alex Edelman is a comedian. He has a one-man show right now playing off Broadway. You can't get tickets to it. Seinfeld's, Billy Crystal, all sorts of people have endorsed it as go see this show. And he is coming here before it will air on Netflix sometime. I don't know when, but I know it was filmed. And really, really excited. And this is like a little nugget of joy that I'm looking forward to selling out and bringing it to Montreal together with Just for Laughs. It's like a part comedy, part theater, because it's laughs all the time, and Alex is a comedian, but he does tell a story. So it's this nice little hybrid, which is why we're excited to be doing it and working with Just for Laughs to promote it. And that's September 17th. And then we have tons more programming that we're doing, but I'm going to leave it there. I saw there was a question pop up, musicals to be your personal niche. Yes, I mean, no, people don't do musicals often because they are harder to do and more expensive to do. They're just, that's it. And doing a new musical is even crazier because most people don't go and see musicals unless you know and love them already. But we have to remember that in order to get to know and love them, somewhere they had to start, somewhere they had to make its way in order to get to that place where it can go all over the world and become known and loved. And I've been very, very privileged to have had the support from our board of directors to enable us to give these new musicals life time and time again. And, I think sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. There's never any regrets. It's very unfortunate that the pandemic took away some opportunities from us with some of our more successful musicals that were scheduled to happen. And we just have to start again, maybe a little more modestly. But yeah, I think musicals really, really separate us from everywhere else and everyone else. And I've spent, and it's an art form unto its own, triple threats, quadruple threats, they're quite something, So thank you for listening to I don't know how long I was talking for. I find listening to long things on Zoom aren't that easy these days. So I really don't want to get too far. I could keep going, but if anyone wants to jump in and ask me any questions about the upcoming season or about the Segal in general, I'm all ears.
Thank you, Lisa. I was going to jump in and ask you not about the future, but a bit about the past. It's how the Segal Centre has been handling in the pandemic, and just to outline in a few words what was done.
Yeah, it feels like yesterday, and I also feels like forever ago. But when we were shut down, I cannot get over the amount of product we put out. And part of that was because we had a responsibility to our staff. We wanted to ensure that everyone could stay working. And we had a responsibility to engage artists because really the artists who don't have the full-time positions were the ones who were suffering even more. And so we put out a ton of stuff. I mean, a lot of it you can still find. I had this Lisa's Nightcap where I got to have reunions with some of our favorite companies and special guests and guests that, I wouldn't have had the chance to speak to before, but because we were all sitting at home, it was just wonderful to be able to invite them and talk to them. And we did some smaller shows. We worked under the weirdest of circumstances with the masks and the protocols and the distancing, but we did it. And I think, everyone should know that in Quebec in particular, culture was really supported. I mean, there is always more and there, but for Quebec culture here, and we can understand this because how much French culture supports the identity of French Quebec, they understand that culture creates identity, culture creates community. And so theaters were supported more than in any other province. And I'm very, very grateful for that, because without those ticket measures, without the extra, boosts in your government grants, it would have been it would have, I mean, it would have been hard, not just financially, but just like, mental health wise. And so knowing that where you are, we are recognized as something that is important and isn't just, oh, shut it down, they'll be back. No, you can't just shut it down and then take for granted that they're going to come back. So that's that was really great.
Mm.
Mention that. Yeah.
I have a question.
Hmm. Who's speaking?
David,
Hi, David.
the Segal Centre and the Centaur are the two major English theaters. Are you in communication with them that you're not putting on the same play at the same time, for example?
Yes. We are very close to the Centaur. We support each other's work. We share our ups and downs together. And we definitely can't guarantee that we're not going to overlap. But I do think it's rare to find that we will, conflict in our programming. I think Ida's doing a beautiful job, and they have announced their season already. And one thing I really appreciate is how much she's working collaboratively with French theaters. That is something that we've done in the past and we want to do more of, but I love that she's doing that. Also, one of the plays that they announced I saw and I loved it, and I'm so happy she's doing it. But we certainly we're in competition, but it's very, very friendly competition, I would say.
Lisa, how did the Sadie Bronfman Center become the Segal Center, and why?
Well, the biggest difference between the Sadie Bronfman Center and the Segal Center is the Sadie Bronfman Center was really more visual arts. And, I think that goes back to Sadie Bronfman, that goes back to Phyllis Lambert, who was the architect of our building. And it was a space for visual arts, pottery shops and ceramic and fabric and a gallery. And although there was always room for small theater, the performing arts wasn't the focus. And I think, it went through, like any cultural center does, ups and downs. And a Mr. Alvin Segal came along and offered to rescue it. And together with the administration at the time, they made a decision, for better or worse, for a new business model that would include the performing arts. And so, Mr. Segal has a story that I think it's like he bought the Sadie for $1, but it cost him 12 million or something, because it went through a huge renovation. He really rescued it. And for a while, we were the Segal at the Sadie. And then eventually the Sadie went off and they now have their own space where they continue to do their visual arts. But the Segal moved forward and became a performing arts center where we housed cinema and dance and music. And then when I came along, I think going 8 years ago, again, we had to revision our model and ask ourselves what was sustainable at the time. And so we decided to leverage and focus on our core competency, which was theater. And so we really put most of our efforts into theater and support, and then community programming around it. And now here we are, 2022, our strategic plan is just expiring and we are moving into the future now. And we are looking at the role we play in community, our Jewish identity, how important it is to celebrate and explore other perspectives, and how we can ensure that English language theater and community programming and the arts can really thrive in a world where costs are high, revenues are lower. Bill 96 is, happening, and what that all means now. So we're deep in it, and this season and going out here, I think, is a first picture at the road ahead.
Thank you.
Susan, I think your hand's been up for a while.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Lisa. Thank you for speaking to our club today. My question, I'm glad you brought up culture and, the dreaded Bill 96. I'm just curious, in the time that you've been there, have you seen, excluding COVID, have you seen any difference in audience sizes in participation?
I would say yes, on a positive side, because I think our audience has shifted its demographic from being solely, I would say, senior up and senior Jewish to French, non-Jewish, senior, younger, and I am working to bring programming that will appeal to our very important, 55 plus audience and younger. And that is why, as a not-for-profit, we work to have, $20 seats if you're a student. We ensure that we have accessible options for the deaf, for the blind. We've done relaxed performances for neurodiverse audience members in the past. So I love that I look at the attendance list and I don't recognize names. That is so important to me and so special to me. On the negative side, because there is one, is I wish I didn't have to worry about ticket sales. I think the population is different. If you go to Toronto, and I plopped ourselves there, just by sheer amount of people, I would not have to worry about it. But I do find that here in Montreal, it's a battle to make sure that everyone knows the Segal Centers for everyone. So you have Anglophones who are in the West Island, you have Anglophones who are in Laval, you have Anglophones who are in St. Leonard, you have Anglophones who are in Brossard, you have everywhere. And how do you make sure that they know that we are here? And you don't have to be Jewish, English doesn't have to be your first language, but there's great theater. Just come, it's so easy. I think this is a constant battle that I've been fighting. The same way that the Centaur Theater has been around much longer, but if you're comparing Broadway and off-Broadway, we are actually the Broadway. We are much bigger than the Centaur, even though they're situated in Old Montreal. But just comparisons to our annual operating budget and everything that we do, we operate on a much bigger scale. So this is something I'm constantly working at. I'm just, hoping that by doing the work that we're doing and doing the shows that we're doing, more and more people will be attracted to come and more people will feel welcome at the Segal.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have another question. Have any of your plays ever gone to Broadway?
None of our plays have gone to Broadway, although we've been close, and we've been working with artists who have. And in fact, it's really exciting. One of our local artists who have done many shows at the Segal Centre is about to make his Broadway debut. We have another artist who was in a show with us also a couple of years ago making his Broadway debut. And, it takes, we were working on Belle Sœur before the pandemic, and we did have workshops in New York at the time. And, it just takes the right show and the right ambassador for that show, the right producer who has that vision. and who wants to seize it and seize the potential. And that's why even on the first try, I want it to be good. I want it to be at the level where you can see that potential and you get excited of where it can even go from here.
What happened to Les Belles Sœurs? I saw it twice. What happened to it after that?
Well, it's available. It's available for theaters anywhere to do right now. And we did a Canadian tour. And then, as I mentioned, you know, we did have some hope that it was going to happen in New York. But that was right before the pandemic. And then now, you know, a lot of the Broadway producers have kind of a backlog of projects. So you really need, you know, I can't just plop myself in New York. You need the right people. You need the right professionals to work with you in order to make things like this happen.
We had a question for Jim Fairs. Lisa, are you originally from Montreal, and how did you get into theater?
Yes, I am originally from Montreal, and my theater passion started from my parents, of course. My dad is a neurologist. He left Montreal, unfortunately, and he practices now. He was here for 30-something years at St. Mary's Hospital, and he's now practicing in West Palm Beach. But he exposed me to A Chorus Line when I was 6 years old. I knew that show backwards and forwards. And then my mom took me to New York when I was, for my 10th birthday, for the first time. I saw, I think, 3 Broadway shows. And I think for some people, when they have a moment, it can be life-changing. And for me, it was life-changing. It was that moment that I just knew that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be a part of. And the rest is really history. And for theater, for anyone working in theater, I think you will find a similar story. It happens to you, whether it's at 6, 10, or 18, where you have an experience either being on stage or watching something, and then you say to yourselves, this is what I have to do. And I did live in other places before moving back here when I met my husband, but I was always involved in theater, always on stage, behind the scenes, always. And I can't really imagine, you know, doing anything else. You know, it'll just always be a part of my life. Like, it is still, when I go see theater and I think to myself, this is part of my job, I can't even believe it.
Rather inspiring to hear.
Yep.
Are there any other questions?
I
Well,
have one.
I have a personal comment to make with respect to your last one. After the First World War, my dad went on the stage in London and was a matinee idol, and came to Montreal with a production in 1925 where he met my mother, who I think fell in love with him immediately and eventually tracked him down in London. And I've come back to Montreal, but it skipped a generation. One of my youngest son would have loved to have gone on the stage. He still does a number of things and voiceovers and stuff like that. But you're right, you get the bug and it doesn't go away.
That's nice.
I had a couple of questions, Malcolm, if that's okay.
Sure.
One is George Doxis still involved with the music at the Sadie? Or the Segal, sorry.
That's okay. No, George Doxis was involved when we had music as one of our pillars. And then when we moved to just really focusing on theater and music became more of an ancillary part of our activities, George moved on as well. But we often, sometimes when we have recordings to do, we get to work with him. We make use of his incredible studio, and we follow him and his very talented family. And they're doing.
And the second thing has to do with plays that I remember. I think one of them was at the Segal, if I'm not mistaken. It was called Saltwater Moon. And the other one that comes to mind, these are plays that have stayed with me over the years, was Brian Friel's Translations. That one I don't think was at the Segal. But given the language context and so on, I'm wondering if you might want to look at plays like that and possibly restage them.
Saltwater Moon is so beautiful. I remember that production very well as well as an audience member. And I saw it in Montreal at the Segal and somewhere else. But I love that show. The other one I've never heard of, Translations, but it sounds interesting. One of, I often get pitched plays, not that you're pitching me, you're making a recommendation, but whether it's a recommendation or a pitch, and every time someone mentions something, I take it very seriously, because word of mouth is the most important way to share theater. More than an ad, more than anything else we can do, it's word of mouth. So I always take it seriously. And then, people often say, like, can you do this, or can you bring this? And I think that's an interesting part of my job. And one of the challenges is how to, when you only have 4 shows, it's a puzzle. And how do you present a lineup that is relevant, diverse, big, small, fits the budget, gender equitable? Like, there's so many factors that go in. Comedy, drama, I mean, there's it's almost an impossible task, which is why I'm obsessed with the upcoming season, because I think it fits everything, and most importantly, they're all going to be great experiences that, like, there's no regrets in terms of what it's going to offer an audience, like a fulfilling experience. But why I can't always do this play by this person if I have something similar, or why I can't, why revivals and remounts are actually talked a lot about right now in our industry, in terms of what, like, how are they relevant today, and do they need to be altered? And if you can alter them to make them even more relevant today, why revisit something? Besides that, it's just a good play. Like, I know Saltwater Moon, it's timeless. It can be done anytime, but why do something timeless, for example, if I have something new, or if I'm trying to support new voices, or if I'm trying to create an experience that will have a deep impact on a particular community or on an audience, in terms of, but besides just being, a fulfilling experience. I don't know. So yeah, planning the season, we take a lot into consideration. And in fact, I'm going to write Translations down, and I'll make sure to look it up. Who did you say you mentioned? Brian somebody?
Friel, F-R, I think it's I-E-L. He's
Okay.
Irish. And just to give you an idea,
Mm-hmm.
it's about the time that the Brits wanted to replace all of the Irish names with English names.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a little romance put in, plus the whole thing. Anyway, you might find it intriguing or enjoyable just to read, even if you don't slot it in somewhere. I know how difficult that can be.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question.
Sure.
It's one word, Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. Are you saying you want more Shakespeare?
Well, have you produced Shakespeare plays?
We've done, the last Shakespeare play we did was Othello. And yeah, I mean, I guess I don't go for Shakespeare plays all that often. One, because we have a company, Repercussion Theater. I'm sure they do Shakespeare in the Park every year, or something to do with Shakespeare. And we have the Stratford Festival. And I know that's far, that's still, 7-hour drive. But yes, I know I don't do Shakespeare that often. And there's no particular reason other than, I asked myself for like, why, or I need to be excited about it. There needs to be something about it that is exciting enough to make me want to do it and be one and get a rare slot for the rest of Montreal to see. How about Shakespeare and Yiddish? Yiddish plays are always fun. I'll say a word about the Yiddish theater, the Dora Wasserman Yiddish Theater. It's 60-year-old legacy. And we did a big play this past season called Helm. It was hysterical. It was for everyone. You didn't need to speak Yiddish to love it. We always have super titles in French and English, and we are coming back with Yiddish programming. We're just not doing a big play, because I think this is another important realization, is to do the work in another language requires like 2-year lead times now, not just 1-year lead times. So we'll be preparing for something else for the next season. And meanwhile, this season, we're going to do some great stuff with them. One in the fall, one in the spring, a bunch of stuff in between. And yes, they're always fun. And I think the one that we're going to do in the spring is all related to food. And so that's going to be fun, and there'll be super titles, and it's actually, there's going to be a lot of English along with the Yiddish in this show that we're doing this spring. So yeah, they're always fun. I agree.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's an interesting glimpse into the world of professional theater here in Montreal. I do have to put in a plug, though, for a play that we're doing as part of Westmount Community Theatre during Honest Persona at Victoria Hall on the 9th, 10th, and 11th of September. We're doing a Dylan Thomas's Under Milkwood.
Wow, that's soon.
It's quite fun. So this has been something we've been working on, basically since February, and it's going to be our first live performance for quite some time. Yes.
Wow. Well, I have such respect for community theater. I certainly got my start in community theater when I was 14. That also was like one of my core memories and amazing experiences here in Montreal. I think I may have even been younger. Now, no, I think I was 14. And I wish you the best of luck. That's very exciting. That's very exciting.
Yes, I keep getting whispers from the background. Invite everyone to come.
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you, Jim, for buying tickets to Alex on the 17th. That's amazing. Yeah, you'll have a good time.
Lisa, some charities have a evening where they sell tickets, for example, Generations, to performances. How does that work?
Well, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to partner with us, because often many charities need to raise money, and
That's why I asked.
Yeah, and they do so by having events, right?
Right.
So we're instead of making their event at the Windsor Ballroom and having everyone in a very expensive dinner and bringing in an act, they just do it at the Segal, and we have the entertainment there for them. So, I mean, treat it like, how does it work? It works that we're a place to offer the entertainment and venue portion to anybody looking to have an event, whether it's to support their charity or to give their employees a good time on a corporate level for profit. We could do it for everybody. And it's wonderful when we have Generations come. I hope they come back again. And yes, they support us by buying tickets to our show, and that supports our entire operation and the artists and us being able to deliver the show. And they get supported by all the wonderful people who choose to attend the event. give money above and beyond the cost of the ticket so that it could all go to them and they get a tax receipt, and that's how it works.
Sure. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or notes? Thank you. Well, thank you, Lisa. That was very informative. I quite like hearing about other theater in general.
Really,
I'm looking forward to seeing some plays at Segal again.
thank you. And I'll just say one more thing about the plays. You know, we have subscriptions, which used to be the bread and butter and the heart and soul of a theater company. Those who commit to building a base of your season, but we realize that in the pandemic, their behaviors are different. So we now have a very flexible way for everybody to support the Segal at the same price. So that's also something that's new this year. And you may not get your same seats, but you'll certainly get to see the show. And for most people, I think that's now more important, to have flexibility. So we're with it.
Thank you. I guess we can turn off the recording.